also 2-0. Great start to this Pro Tour for both of these competitors.
Is that a Ragamuffins hat? Like
No.
on the player?
Maybe a real-life Ragamuffins hat. Yes, I think you're correct, Tannen. Let's talk about these equipment setups here. We do have gambler's gloves sitting there in the arm slot for Iain. In conjunction with the scab skin leathers, you see just barely off screen there. You get it. You want to get extra action points as Levia. And on the Oldhim side, you're just looking to soak up this damage. You do not want to let this push through. And I have no idea what's going to happen here. I don't know if Levia can realistically push through damage against such a prolific defensive hero as Oldhim.
We're going to have to find out. And talking about that equipment, I like to always make a mention that we get to get the old like WWE throwback. You know, there's a lot of wrestling involved and wrestling themes involved in Flesh and Blood. And you got the mandible claw sitting here on the other side, little Mick Foley action going over here for Levia. So if we make a couple WWE references, hopefully you can follow along at home.
Yeah, no Mr. Sacco on those mandible claws, but still nonetheless devastating.
What was the other? Was it Dude Love?
Dude Love was Mick Foley's other persona. Yeah. Cactus Jack.
Yeah, he's a man of many talents.
Yeah, many faces. Winter's Bite going to come down for Jean-Sebastien Laurent here.
Yeah, it does look like it's going to be followed up by a Command and Conquer here, a very big attack. This is a 6-power attack that if it hits the hero is going to destroy the arsenal. So Levia already kind of on a back foot here a little bit. It may be 40-40, but this is the first really important play of the game.
No, and Arsenal is a big deal for Levia because a lot of her attacks require discarding, banishing. You just need a lot of resources to successfully Levia. And anytime you're giving up cards either for blocking or just losing them to Command and Conquer, hitting your arsenal, that's something you can't do on your turn. And like you mentioned, it's so critical for the Levia to seize the initiative here, be the aggressor in this matchup. See that signed Levia. I think that's from the godfather of Levia, Mansan. Pretty sure.
Speaking of that mandible claw, here we go. We got the first attack. This turn's coming in. Just that mandible claw. Let's see. Now, is this something that you're going to see the Oldhim side? I know, like you said, you probably haven't got as many reps in this matchup as you'd like, but just from a general sense of Oldhim, are you going to allow the little damage to come through, or are you going to be fighting over every point?
It's hard. As Oldhim, you generally just want to protect your life total as much as possible. Where things get a little awkward for Oldhim is in these actually smaller, persistent source of damage. I mean, when they are able to routinely come at you multiple times with mandible claws every turn, you're giving up a little bit more than you want to, but you see Oldhim has the tools. There's Crown of Seeds. There's the Oldhim hero ability. All of these things can potentially come together to allow a just full-bodied defensive setup. We see Mandible Claw being debated here.
Going to draw back up here. We're going to go back over that Tunic, taking its way up. It's up to 2. Looks like we're going to get our first big attack here from a Guardian offensive. It looks like a Spinal Crush is coming out here for the Oldhim player.
Yeah, Spinal Crush, a little bit more offensive than these Oldhims tend to trend. I think they often, they do care about the on-hits, but a lot of times you'll see it just be like Endless Winter, Oak and Old. Spinal Crush, though, maybe points to a different setup for this Oldhim where it will be trying to push a little bit more damage than we typically see. Also an interesting distinction, Feyendale Spring Tunic versus something like Tectonic Plating. All this stuff matters for sure. And you see on the Levia side, a little bit of defense going to be mounted. Hungering Slaughter Beast going to be put in front of that Spinal Crush, try and soak up a bit of the damage. Looks like the Levia player here okay with losing go again. That makes sense. Levia has capability to both go wide with the Mandible Claws or go tall and just pump out some big damage.
Absolutely. Looks like we're going to get some damage sent over to the Levia player this turn. Looks like with that sink below, it only goes down to 38. Does look like we're going to have an arsenal in the pass here. I'd say for everybody at home, get comfortable.
Settle in.
Yeah, settle in. This is going to be a game that's going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah, obviously Oldhim is the defensive hero here, but it's not like Levia doesn't have defensive capabilities as well. Carrion Husk, really one of the best defensive equipments in the game. One of the best equipments in the game, period. Here you see a salvo from the Levia player. It is Endless Maw, and this is where the Levia mechanics start to come in. Going to banish 3 random cards from the graveyard, and if you hit a 6 or more attack, You get a little plus on that, so you get to attack for 9 instead. And you see the hit has been made. Of course, that also comes up with the Levia hero ability. If you go ahead and banish a card with 6 or more power, Blood Debt is shut off. That's a big deal. I mean, Levias lose to their Blood Debt. It's not so much like the chain setup where
you can't really get rid of it other than this.
You're so reliant on the hero ability, and Levia will build up a lot of Blood Debt as the game goes on. I can't tell you how many games I've seen on the Levia side decided by the fact they hit 7, 8 Blood Debt cards in their banish zone, and they just can't find the key discard in that spot.
Now, from the Levia side, we've talked about it might be hard for them to get damage through. These kind of attacks, the ones that get pumped if you randomly remove something for 6 that attack for 9, are these the attacks that are actually going to be the deciding in the game, the ones that have the higher power?
To be honest with you, Tannen, it can go several ways. It's just going to be hard. Like, Levia doesn't really have the tools to push through a ton of damage in the face of these type of defensive reacts. I think if you're Iain, this is not a matchup you would have chosen. I think this is a weak point for Levia. She has a hard time fighting through just this defensive setup. But when you have the confidence to bring a deck like Levia to the first Pro Tour, you're making a statement in and of itself. You're saying, I know this hero well enough. Everyone else has written it off. I believe. I have a plan. Now, we don't have deck lists in front of us, so I can't speculate exactly how Iain is set up for this matchup, but there's certainly potential in the kit, as there is potential in every Flesh and Blood kit, to find an angle to attack these Guardians.
It looks like 5 damage did leak through there for the Levia player, so the Oldhim player down to 33 here. Let's see. Looks like he might be actually lining up some form of an attack here. This looks like an Ice card getting pitched, but it's not going to be for a Grasp. It's going to be for a Zealous Belting.
Yeah, and like I said, there are some hints from this Oldhim player that were slanted a little more aggressive, and you see this from time to time. Occasionally you see Oldhim lists that park things like Art of War, things like Zealous Belting, and they're not aggressive decks per se, but they do have more damage output than you would expect from such a defensively positioned hero. And having seen Zealous Belting now, I'm inclined to believe that that's what we're going to see from Sebastien Loren.
And usually this is something that's a nod towards Prism, right? Because it's a matchup that can be very difficult for them, and they need to be able to go wide in that matchup. But it looks like he's maybe found a spot. Go ahead. This is a pummel.
Yeah, another indication that this is a more aggressive Oldhim. We're going to go ahead and force some damage here with this pummel. Of course, pummel critical not only to put through damage on the Levia player, but also that critical discard coming through can really mess with the opponent's hand.
A card that's on my radar this weekend for maybe having a re-coming out party.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be a huge player in the Starvo decks. But you've seen it do its thing in Oldhim as well, pushing through this Zealous Belting damage.
And I want to point out something here. This is important for me in matchups, and I think it's going to be important in this game. You might actually see it kind of affect how the Levia player plays the rest of the game. I actually like showing pummel as soon as possible in a lot of my games because of the effect it has on blocking for the rest of the game.
No, that's a great point, Tannen. I mean, anytime those resources are floating, you got to be thinking about it. And I want to talk about the defensive side here. I mentioned Levia has some defensive potential. Reckless Swing coming in as a D-react. That's 4 defense right there. Going to go ahead and discard a card, also do a little bit of damage if you happen to pitch the right thing. I think we missed there. I think we hit Blood Rush Bellow instead, so there's not going to be additional damage. But also on that side, it looks like this round's on me. Of course, Everfest print there. Hasn't seen much play. Tannen, I don't know what your thoughts are on this round's on me. I think this is a card that has long-term constructed potential. It's unique in the game. The symmetrical draw card effect, really interesting, but also slowing down your opponent's next turn.
I absolutely agree with you there. I think it's a card that, depending on certain circumstances that go into the future, especially in, like, say, Guardian decks or decks that are looking for that way to possibly get defensive, also just getting the extra card in your hand, Levia can sometimes utilize an extra card better than their opponent.
That's a great point. Yeah. Great point. And, I love this round's on me with Earthlore Bounty as a card I've looked at it with. There's just so many cool things this card does.
Absolutely. So Tunic's going to go back up to 1 here. We've got an arsenal set up. It looks like we're going to have some form of attack here. It looks like, okay, we're going to have a Crown of Seeds activation. Clean that hand up just a little bit.
It's so fascinating how this has played out so far. You set up the matchup as the Brute, the aggro Brute Levia, taking on Oldhim, the pure defensive Guardian. And thus far, it's been Oldhim on the aggressive side. They're the ones trying to push through damage, and I wonder if that's going to continue throughout this match.
He still is a very large man with a very large axe, so
yeah,
he can get real angry sometimes.
Very fair.
Looks like this is going to be a Winter's Bite. Targeting the opponent. You can see the hero has to discard a card here or pay 1, so this is going to get a card out of Iain's hand. Levia, a hero that needs all those cards in their hand generally, so very important stuff here. Do you like leading on this with a lot of your turns from Oldhim?
It's a huge, huge impact for a blue. I mean, that's the thing about it. It's such low opportunity cost. It fuels your Winter's Wail. It fuels your Oldhim hero ability. So it's just such a huge, important card to have in your deck. And then when it lines up in such a manner that you have the extra resources, you can go ahead and deploy it. And it, like you said, almost always costs your opponent a card.
Yeah, this is a card we don't see very often. I love seeing the cards kind of pop. Another Everfest print here. This is Thunderquake.
Yeah, of course, with that Heave ability, you go ahead and sink some resources into that at the end of your turn. You can put it in an arsenal and start with some Seismic Surge tokens on your next turn. Not the case here, just paying retail. Going to pitch 6 and go ahead and fire off that big 8 attack. And again, we continue to see Levia just stack defense in front.
Yeah, it does look like we're going to get a block for at least 3 here. It does look like it's just going to be 3. It's like an ask, do you have the pummel? And see what I'm talking about. This is going to have an effect for the rest of the game. So especially if you get the light totals low or Iain's trying to protect a card in his hand, you might see a weird block later in the game. So I definitely want to point that out. If you see something like that later in the game, that's what's happening here. There has been a pummel revealed in this game already. And the problem is when you see a pummel, you don't know, is that the only one? Is there 2? Is there 3? Are there multiple colors?
Are there multiple? That's the one that always gets me. Like, is there a yellow pummel working for me as well? You start getting a little bit paranoid when pummel comes into the picture.
The scariest one to see is the yellow one first.
Oh, yeah. Because anything's possible from that point. Looks like we got a Dread Screamer coming down on the Levia side. Again, random banish going to be attached to this.
Time to roll the dice.
Yeah. Looking to shut off that blood debt.
Does look like we got some with power here, so it does look like the 6 is going to be fed.
Yeah, that's critical. That's going to give Dread Screamer a go again and activate that Levia hero ability, meaning no blood debt on this turn. Going to be hard for us to track exactly what's going on in terms of blood debt. You see it's being set aside. I can't get an exact count of like how real the danger is at this point. There's some cards there that they will matter at some point if ever that Levia ability is not activated. Not sure exactly to what tune though.
Yeah, I think there might be 2 left, but I'm not sure. Like you said, we can't get it exactly. I will say this. The cards in Levia's decks, when I look at the artworks, are nightmare-inducing.
Oh,
you like
absolutely.
this kind of stuff. The art's amazing, but boy, am I going to have that in my dreams tonight, and I'm not looking forward to it. This looks like we got a block for 6 here, too. Macho Grande coming out to get a block. Love seeing these Everfest Guardian cards coming out, because not only are they beautiful, but I feel like they've been a little underplayed, and this is the kind of deck where you're going to see them more.
No, I agree with you. I think the rise of Starvo dictated a lot of what Guardian was going to be about in this new metagame, but there's a lot of Guardian tools outside of that present in Everfest.
Looks like we got a cold 4 Winter's Wail coming across here. It was an ice card pitched to it, so there is going to be that Frostbite on hit. Let's see how the Levia player wants to do this. Let's see if they have any defenses they on here, or they're just going to go ahead and take this and deal with the Frostbite on their turn. It does look like we're going to get a double block here. There's another, this round's on me, plus the Arcanine Skullcap, which is active, so that actually blocks for 5 here. It does seem like, we're going to go ahead and get that block in the Arcanine Skullcap. There's a chance that we're going to get the second one here this game, because if you're on the Levia side, they're taking some damage here from this Oldhim player, so definitely going to make sure he gets those 2 blocks in. It looks like we're going to have a Howl from Beyond to start this turn, borrowing a card that's usuly played out of the chain deck here, but we're going to pump up the jam here.
Even us non-Levia vets know this one well. It is a little bit of pump. Going to go ahead and push that attack up to 9. Boneyard Marauder coming through for a big swing here.
Yeah, it looks like a 9 coming through here. Howl from Beyond doing a lot of work.
Yeah, and of course, Boneyard Marauder coming with that banish. 3 cards headed to the graveyard. Headed from the graveyard to the banish zone.
Looks like we got a hit on the first one.
Yep. Yeah, we're good. Blood debt going to be turned off yet again.
I love the little icon he puts on top of his hero. It's like the little medic cross. It's like, we're good. We can't take damage here.
Yeah, look, I mean, Iain has obviously spent some time with this hero, right? This is a labor of love going on here. Very prepared. You don't bring Levia to the Pro Tour by accident.
Yeah, this is when you talk a big game and you back it up.
Yep. And thus far, looking decent. Again, I don't think any hero has really taken an edge so far in the matchup. It feels like they're both trying to, figure out their posturing, right? Who is the defensive side? Who's the aggressive side? It's still to be decided in this matchup. Getting some word from our fellow commentators here. Iain actually former LSS employee, just complete brute main from the beginning, has always embraced this hero. It's so fascinating as we become familiar with these players who are now part of this Pro Tour scene. We'll get to know these backstories a bit more. It's so cool to see someone who has just had this affinity for the class from the beginning get to shine in this first event.
Yeah, I'd say that he has some of the most events attended in the entire world. So well-seasoned opponent here. Now we see a big attack coming through that we talked about. We see a Crown of Seeds activation, a Rampart of the Ram's Head block, and a block with an Oakenhold here. So
yeah, classic Oldhim defensive turn, using all those pieces very well. Making defense out of nothing. That's what Oldhim excels at. Just thin air, Crown of Seeds, boom. Oldhim hero ability, boom. Rampart, all of these things persistently providing defense.
Tunic up to 3 here, not as important as it is in, say, like the Starvo matchup where you're always going to have the 5-card hands, but still important. Yep. Allows blocks with like Rampart or activation of Crown Seeds without using a card from your hand in some of these situations.
Absolutely. Pretty weak attack coming in here from the Oldhim side. Just going to be a warm 4, as Tannen likes to say.
I'm glad it's catching on.
Oh, yeah. It's completely part of my lexicon at this point. Just Evergreen and Spinal Crush being pitched. One thing I want to keep track of this game, moving at a slower pace, that second cycle, you got to start thinking about it. And you see powerful cards like Spinal Crush making their way to the bottom of the deck. It's possible Jean-Sebastien Laurent already thinking that they have to set up and handle this late game. Find a way to push damage through at the end, recognizing that this Levia is doing a great job of playing defense right now.
It's a really great point, Brian. And our Oldhim player is going to go ahead and arsenal up and pass back over to our Levia player, also operating with a full hand and an arsenal here. So both players kind of operating at a full power here. We got a 25-29 lead for the Oldhim player here, but that's going to change this turn. We're going to start off with a Howl from Beyond. So whatever the attack is here, it's going to be big.
Yep, we're going to push an extra 3 onto this attack.
Generally, they're in factors of 3 from the Levia deck, so that makes it kind of easy. It's going to be 6 or 9. This is a swing big.
How about 11? How does that suit you, Tannen?
This is a big swing, Brian.
Yes.
I couldn't resist. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist.
I'll allow it because swing big, again, another Everfest print. Look at how much effect Everfest has had on this metagame. It's easy to see just like the Starvo influence, but you look at all these decks and how important these ads from Everfest have been. They've really rejuvenated so many of these classes, and I think it's gotten overshadowed by Starvo a little bit. But swing big, just a massive attack, pushing 11 for only 2 resources. Of course, there's a downside. If Jean-Sebastien Laurent is able to find an effective block for this entire attack, this entire massive 11 attack, will be rewarded with a Quicken token.
The thing about it is, though, usually to get out of the situation and not take damage from this, you have to give up so many cards that the Quicken token is not going to be totally relevant. And I think you're okay with Oldhim getting some Quicken tokens as the game goes on, generally.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting with Quicken tokens because, I mean, they have the effect of persisting, right? So you can bank that and use that on a turn where it's most important. So even if you do give up your whole hand, you just sit there with the Quicken token, fire it in the future. That's pretty acceptable, but that's still a huge commitment. It dictates the pace of play. It tells you what you're going to have to do when you present a swing big to an opponent.
Yeah, it does look like a little bit of blood that going ahead on the Levia player here. Now they do have an arsenal here, so this Command and Conquer threatening that yet again. One of the probably like most recognizable cards in all of Flesh and Blood, one of the most played generics, and hey, it's huskable, actually. We're getting the life total down low. We're at 19.
Yep.
16 is the the pummel.
This is a massive pummel from Jean-Sebastien Laurent. It's going to go ahead, push through that Command and Conquer. It's going to get both a discard and going to go ahead, get that Command and Conquer on hit, clean out the arsenal. I mean, you talked about this being a coming out party again for a pummel. I mean, we know this to be one of the most powerful attack reactions in the game. It's going to shine this weekend, though, and you're seeing exactly why.
Yeah, this is going to be, I think, the biggest turning point of the game. This is the most important turn. This was back-breaking almost for the Levia player, the fact that it gets the arsenal out, it's going to get another card out of the hand, and it's going to push through damage and the Carrion Husk. It just keeps adding on.
Well, here's the thing, too, Tannen, is like, I think this is why Levia has had some struggles as a hero. I'm not saying it's not viable. Anything's viable in Flesh and Blood. You work hard enough, you know your hero. But it's had struggles. And part of it is that if you find yourself in this scenario where you have been disrupted and you aren't able to put together your next turn as you envisioned it, you might find yourself just dead to your blood debt. You have to find a way to go ahead and get that Levia ability to trigger. And we are going to attempt that now. I think we have another Endless Maw being fired. It's just a blue one. I promise you this is way more about shutting off that blood debt than it is trying to push any damage through.
Oh yeah, the life total getting down to 15 it's actually serious here, because that blood debt, if you don't ever stop it, is going to start bringing you down into single digits the next turn or two, and that's when decks like Oldhim, Guardian attacks really start to shine.
Oh yeah.
When you get down to the single digits, anything that's dominated is game ending.
And this round's on me. Howl from Beyond. I didn't see what the last banish was. It does look like it turned on the Levia ability, though, and turned on the Endless Maw. So Endless Maw going to go ahead, come in for 7. That was a sweat. I mean, 3 cards revealed, 2 of them not shutting off Levia. There had to be a moment of panic there for Iain. But ultimately, Levia turned on 7 damage, headed Oldham's way.
See how much the Oldhim player likes their hand, how much they want to try to, because like at this point, if you're the Oldhim player, you're starting to see the finish line, the life total getting a little low.
I think so. I mean, the big thing is going to be if Oldhim finds a way to push through some disruption. If you ever fuse an Oakenold, you're in such a powerful spot against the Levia player, because how do you then go ahead and turn off your blood debt for the turn? It's almost impossible.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to block with a card from hand, and then we're going to go ahead and activate the ice ability of the Oldhim.
Yeah, not only the ice ability, the earth ability as well. That's Pulse. So it's going to trigger both of them when we go ahead and pitch here. And that means no Arsenal on the next turn for Iain. Also a little bit more damage prevention. You know, we're used to seeing this as the fuse card for Starvo. That's where it shines there. For Oldhim, this is the play you want to make. That pitch right there, again, another big swing. So a couple of back-to-back really strong turns from the Oldhim player.
And it does look like there's going to be a little bit of blood debt. I'm sorry, no blood debt for Iain. He satisfied that trigger from Levia, but it does look like the Winter's Wail is going to push across 4 cold damage here.
Yeah, and a little bit of, you know, I would say a downswing in pressure here from the Oldhim player, but, you know, set up for the next turn. Maybe you're trying to Arsenal something like that Oakenold, set up for that really big salvo against the Levia player. And let's not downplay the impact of a Frostbite token either. I mean, that can, again, really mess up timing. That's so critical for the Levia player to turn off that blood debt.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to make. And you pointed this out, that anytime the cards are missing from the Levia player, anytime they have to give up extra cards, lose their arsenal, any of their plans, their turns just seem a little bit weaker on average than some of the other decks that are maybe a little bit more flexible.
No, I agree with you. It's a precarious situation when that blood debt starts piling. And I see some dice over on the blood debt. It looks like we're at 8 blood debt now. So if you ever fail to go ahead and trigger that Levia ability, I mean, the problems are big. They're adding up. Howl from Beyond played from the banish zone here. Looks like Dread Screamer is going to be the play. That is, of course, going to do 3 random banishes. Again,
super important that he hits here.
He can't miss. I mean, the game has just gone to a disastrous place should Iain miss. 3 cards pulled out. Here's the big. Look at him rubbing his hands. Is John Sebastien Loren.
Oh, we're gonna slow roll it. I love it.
Okay, there we go. We got there.
The inner poker player in me really appreciates the slow
roll.
By the way, I really appreciate the sweat.
Tannen, that was 1 hit again. So we're playing with fire on Iain's side. There was only 1 6 power or more revealed. It would have been taking 8 blood debt damage on that turn should that not come through. But not to worry for now. Another tall attack from Iain. Oldhim pretty good at dealing with this type of stuff. But the question is, do you want to just make a swing back?
I'd like to point something out, too. You know, we talked about this ahead of time that, you know, we may have gotten a tiny bit wrong on the role association in this matchup. Have we seen a defensive reaction out of the Oldhim player this entire game, besides his actual ability? I don't think we have, unless there was one very early.
There may have been a sink below very early.
Yeah, but there was on like turn 1.
Yeah, I mean, it just hasn't been defensive focused at all. I agree that this Oldhim is leaning way more aggressive. And, you know, again, we talked about this in the pre-show. It's a fascinating issue where you see a hero, you see Oldhim, and you go, uh-oh, they're going to turtle up. I better be ready to push some damage. And then they come at you with E-Strike, Art of War, Spinal Crush, over and over and over, just trying to push damage through.
You see the kind of nod from Iain here, as well say, I wonder if that's a thing that's going to happen here. Like you said, that this is a way that Oldhim gets a little extra percentage points in matchups, right? Like, when you surprise someone, this can actually really turn a matchup on its head.
Absolutely. Sideboarding is so critical in Flesh and Blood. I think it's something that really separates the best players from the middle-of-the-road players, the players we have here today at the Pro Tour. These are the ones who can absolutely hammer home their sideboarding. And look, someone who's played as many rounds as Iain has knows the possibility that the Oldhim slant's more aggressive. This deck it exists. It isn't coming completely out of left field. So maybe you hedge a little bit in your setup. You're trying to be ready for both this more aggressive Oldhim and a more defensive Oldhim at the same time. And it remains to be seen if you can be effective at doing both those things at the same time. I will note, Gambler's Gloves still at the ready, Scabskin Leathers still at the ready. So Levia has potential for a huge output turn. You know, something that really charges up those mandible claws. Could get the job done, but again, more aggression from the Oldhim player. It's a zealous belting.
Yeah, you see the reaction from the in there because like he took the 5 from a lightning strike there, kind of signaling probably having a very good hand, maybe turn the game around.
He needs his hand to turn off the blood debt, and you see him flick it. He can't give up these cards. It'll put him in such a precarious position if he doesn't have resources going into the next turn.
Yeah, really well played by both sides here, but definitely by the Oldhim player realizing like this is a matchup where I want to be on the aggressive side. I want to be pressuring my opponent. You've seen a very good, and look at this, we're seeing the equipment come out to block here. So blocking for 5.
Yep, going to go ahead and use those leathers, and Winter's Wail going to be the last attack here.
When's the last time you saw an Oldhim player attack 3 times in a turn?
I mean, that is good use of the combat chain, I will say that, and impressive output from a Guardian.
Yep, and this Winter's Wail is going to be a cold 4 coming across. It does look like a Frostbite. It's going to be given over to the Levia player. They're down to 6. If Blood Debt doesn't get turned off here, the game's probably over.
It is. It has to be turned off for the rest of the game. If you ever mess up and don't, you lose. And like I said, this happens to Levias. They get themselves in this position. They know it. It's not a surprise when it comes down, but this is sort of the fire you play with for those huge attacks you get paid off with from the Levia side. Something like a Blood Rush Bellows Mandible Claw here. I mean, that's what really needs to happen from the Levia side to turn this game around. Looks like it's just going to be a Howl from the Banish Zone.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pay a little bit for that. The Frostbite, I'm sorry, is gone. It does look like a giant attack here is coming in from the Levia player.
Yeah,
an Endless Maw.
Another Endless Maw.
Okay.
Yep, so we're going to do the thing again. 3 more Banishes. Have to hit. Has to happen. Otherwise, this is just over. That will be it. See if we get a nice slow roll here again.
Yeah, slow roll us again. I'd love. Ooh, we're getting a slow roll for the Oldhim player, too. I like this.
Yeah, pull it aside. A little revealing.
He's like, can I
Number
reveal
1.
Ooh, we got a hit on the very
no,
first.
No, we did not.
Okay,
Only
that's
4.
That's
Number 2.
Oh.
This round's on me. This is it, Ted.
Oh, no.
Oh, look at this.
I love this. I love this. I love this.
Beast
he got it on the last one.
Gets there.
We got there on the last one. Nice. I love when the players get this much into it. This is good TV.
Yes, yes. Love to see it.
Oh, don't forget, there's an attack for 10 coming in.
Yep. A little bit of damage being pushed.
We'll say the Levia player here is cut from our ilk as well. Has done some commentary in his time as well. So he knows how to put on a good show. We're definitely appreciating it here in the booth, and I hope you're appreciating it here at home, watching along with us for Pro Tour New Jersey, the very first Pro Tour from Flesh and Blood. It looks like we're going to have a big block lined up here. It's going to block, I think, at least 4 of it here.
Yeah, it looks like 4 being lined up. 1 from the Crater Fist. 3 from what I think is a Debilitate there. So soaking up a little damage.
Yeah.
You know, life total on the Guardian side, also precarious.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Levia has damage output. It can happen. I mentioned Blood Rush Bellows as a card that you have to fear if you're over on Iain's side. But here's a Zealous Belting. So again, is Jean-Sebastien Laurent trying to set up another one of those go wide aggressive turns that we do not typically see from Guardians, but he's been very successful at doing thus far.
I got to believe that's what's happening this turn with the block that came from last turn with these cards left over in his hand. He's got his Zealous Belting attacking for 5 here. There's a card left over in his hand. We see a resource left over and the Spring Tunic as well. But I got to believe at the least Winter's Wail is coming behind this.
I would agree with that assessment. There will be 2 attacks here. And again, you're doing this because you are demanding cards from the Levia. This is the problem when Levia gets down to this life total. You have to both protect your life total and turn off your blood debt. That is your priority. And if you do not do that, you will lose the game.
It does look like we have a block from the other player here. I think that's a block for 3, so 2 is going to leak over. He's going to go down to 4.
Wrecker Romp going to be used to block here.
That 4 number, that's the amount of Winter's Wail. Oh, no, we've got to attack out of the arsenal here. Looks like an icy encounter.
Icy encounter pushing 6 instead, and now that's asking a lot.
I love this sequencing here from our Oldhim player, too, as well, making it look like, oh, possibly I only have the 4 coming in behind this. Now it's actually a higher number. Yeah. Definitely possibly throwing a wrinkle in the plan of our Levia player.
Yeah, and it looks like scab skin leathers and a card going to have to come in front here. And that's the thing. That card having to come in front, that could spell doom for Iain.
It does look like we're going to get an attack. I'm assuming this is a block for 3.
Yeah, I think
So
Unwieldy Bellows.
4 overall, so he's going to take 2. Yep.
And now, turn off your Blood Dead or Die.
Frostbite also relevant here. Don't forget, Frostbite on hit from Icy Encounter.
Of course. And it's got to be, I believe only 2 cards in hand. It's got to be a draw and discard effect. Otherwise, this is just over.
Yeah, but
you see that Blood Debt continue to tick up.
I think our Levia player, you see the shake of the head, doesn't know if they're going to get there, but it's the last throws of this game. Let's see what happens. Okay, it is going to be one of those cards.
Yeah, Dread Screamer, Eye of Ophidia. Second time we've seen that today. Not from the Kano player, oddly enough.
We have seen some Fables get thrown around today. It's nice to see those.
Yeah, I always like to see them pop out. So Dread Screamer here, going to banish 3 cards.
Life totals aside, this is now what the game has become about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to have those 3 random cards get banished. If one of them is not a power 6 or more attack, then the game is going to end on the spot.
How about another sweat?
I don't
know what's in there. I don't think there are a lot of 6-power attacks left. So
yeah, he's been hitting a lot of 2s on a lot of these. So
yeah.
you like drama at the Pro Tour. It was what we wanted.
All right.
We didn't know we were going to get this in.
One at a time. Dread Screamer right off
That's
the
a red
bat.
one, too,
Okay.
so that's good. And then, that's actually a really good banish.
Yeah, it's the only one. It was
Yep.
the only one that would have gotten him. Again, that's 3 consecutive 33%ers that he's hit there. It's kind of wild.
I'm glad you did the math. I am not a math scientist.
The truth is that's
side.
not actually good math because that's not what's being calculated, but don't bring that up, Tanner. Just let it go by.
Sure. I was trying to give you a compliment, and you had to do that.
Yeah, I'm honest to a fault. It wasn't great math. But Sink Below going to go ahead and block this Dread Screamer. No damage pushing through. That means Oldhim going to be clear to fire back, and same squeeze as the last turns. Iain has to block basically everything at this point. The problem is he also needs a hand that can potentially turn off Blood Debt or win. I mean, that's the other option, right? Like, if you're not turning it off, you have to win on the spot. That's going to be real hard, though, when you're down a few cards. So just disable coming through. It is a blue disable.
So it's only for 7.
Only for 7,
right.
But 7's a lot in this context. Again, you assume that demands 2 cards, and then you have to turn off your Blood Debt with the last card. It's so hard for Iain to pull out of this position.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this isn't a dominated attack or the ones that would have probably ended it. On the go again attack might have ended the game immediately. So maybe there's a line where our Levia player gets to play for another turn. We'll see. Looks like he's lining up a 2 block here.
Yeah, going to take
1.
1 damage, fall to 1. Yeah. And now we get to do the dance again one more time.
Yeah, 7 being the magic number there. It was a nice break point. The fact that 1's going to leak through the 2 for the Levia player. They could stay alive for at least one more turn. They needed an attack that was either bigger, dominated, or had go again there.
It looks like Mark of the Beast is the play here. Going to come through for 6. We're going to do the thing again.
We don't even need to pull this one up our screen. They're doing it for us.
Oh, wait, this is cheating. This is cheating on the part of Iain. Mark of the Beast. If it would go to the graveyard from anywhere, banish it instead.
Yeah. So this is going to go ahead and satisfy that Levia ability by itself.
Yes, it is.
No randomness. It's pretty good for him as well. He's going to be able to have a full hand going in the next turn, maybe be able to block. If, again, we're in that spot then again. Domination, attacks.
Yeah,
anything would go again.
Here's the thing. You have to catch the Oldhim with their pants down, where they just draw basically a bunch of blanks and they can't fire back. But by extending the game in this fashion, by hitting those outs, you're playing towards it. You're giving yourself a chance to just let that Oldhim player completely brick off the top. But critically here, block with Spring Tunic. That tells me that there's a quality hand here from John Sebastien Loren, and I expect a big fire back on this next turn.
Tanking of the 5 damage here. This has to be a big attack.
It's Macho Grande, dominated 4-8. Iain's going to take a look at the cards, but the writing is on the wall here. That is going to eventually get the fist bump, and Oldhim moves to 3-0 here at the Pro Tour, despite a very valiant showing from Levia. I mean, I think Iain did all the Levia players out there proud today.
Absolutely. And I think that Oldhim is definitely one of the heroes that coming into this weekend was kind of like one of the ones that's